Welcome everybody. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I appreciate it. If you are not familiar with me, I am Pixel Dan. I do a YouTube channel talking about toys. He-Man is kind of my jam. Any of you guys not familiar with me? Does everybody watch my stuff? Cool. This will be very easy then. Awesome. So today I thought it would be really cool to give you guys a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look at my book that I released in the past year, which is the Toys of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, which is an official toy guide that I had the opportunity to write and do photography for. It was kind of one of those like dream come true kind of lines. It was one of those things I've always wanted to see done, and so yeah, I got the book right. I love it. I love it. One of those things I've always wanted to see, because Masters of the Universe has always been my favorite property, and I always wanted to see like a proper like collection put together in book form that went over everything. And it was one of those things where I just kind of figured at some point, like, if anybody's going to do it, why not me, right? And so I kind of started poking around, and the opportunity arose, and I jumped on it and spent about 3 years compiling this book. And what I thought would be cool today is to kind of go through this process with you and show you guys what I did to make this happen. Has anybody here already seen this presentation? Good, because I've done this at a few shows, so I'm always worried that I'm like repeating myself too much. So, you know, of course, like that's me as a kid. It's always been one of my absolute favorite things. You know, I going out in the front yard and playing He-Man in the dirt is something that I still remember very vividly, and I love this photo of me with all my figures lined up in the front yard is one of my favorites, because it just perfectly encapsulates like playing with toys in the 80s. Like, that's it right there, right? Like, that's amazing. That second picture there, I know it's a little hard to tell, but that yellow thing sticking out of my shirt, that's a power sword. I used to always stick my power sword in the back of my shirt and run around the house and then pull it out to transform into He-Man. My mom loves telling that story all the time. So I just love those photos. But now we're going to start showing you guys some of what it was like to travel around and basically photograph everything, because everything in this book I shot photos for, essentially. Me and my team, we all shot photos for everything in this book, which is quite a task, to be perfectly honest. The book covers everything from 1982, the original toy line, all the way through the end of the Masters of the Universe Classics line, which ended in 2019. So we're talking close to 40 years worth of content in this book. And you know, that's several different toy lines. That's the original toy line, that's the She-Ra Princess of Power line, that's the New Adventures of He-Man line from the 90s, the early 2000s reboot. And in order to do this, you know, I've got a lot of toys, but I don't have everything. So we really had to rely on the toy community to help us out with this. And what we kind of did is we just started sending out feelers looking for toy collectors who had large collections, large complete collections, and asked them if they would allow us into their home for a weekend where I could set up like a little photo studio and just photograph all their toys in their collection. And this was a really, really fun process. It was always like it was also a learn as you go process. Like, this is one of those things where, like, when we jumped into it, we kind of had to figure it all out, and it got better as we went. You know, I've already got some good studio lighting and some equipment because of the YouTube content that I do, but it was like figuring out the best way to travel around with all this equipment, be able to set up a nice, usable makeshift photo studio in people's homes that was easy to tear back down when we were done. That was, you know, kind of one of those things that, like, as we went, we got better and better with it. And then the same with the photography itself. You know, we really played with a lot of camera settings to find the best way to shoot these figures, the best way to light the figures. So it was really a learning curve, but it was a fun process. And I think my favorite part about it was really getting to meet all these toy collectors and see their collections and see what they focused on, why they focused on those specific things, the way they displayed stuff. Like, that was an amazing part of this entire experience. Like this next picture, like, ignore the goofy guy in front, but like this She-Ra collection was amazing. and visiting, her name was Krista. She lives down in Florida, so we went all the way to Florida. And she's got this whole room that's just nothing but Princess of Power stuff. And if you look on the shelves back there, again, behind the stupid guy in the glasses, you'll notice that there's like several of the same figures all lined up next to each other. But every one of those figures is slightly different from one another. They're all like weird paint variations coming out of different factories, different country of origin. And it's all these little things like that, just little bitty differences that makes them stand out from one another. And that's the kind of thing, like, that sort of exists, but it doesn't really resonate until you see it. And you're just like, oh my God, this is insane, it's intense. And it's amazing to see, again, like, this is the way she wants to collect. She wants to have all these different variations. And that's not how everybody collects, right? Everybody has their own way of doing things. And I think that's why this was such a fun process. The corner picture there, that is a mint in box Eternia that we're photographing, the vintage one. That, of course, is not an easy thing to come by. That's another part of this whole process that was complicated, because not only did we have to find somebody that had, everything opened and complete, but we also had to find people that had everything packaged, because we photographed everything in the packaging for the book too. So we really had to rely on like different types of collectors. We had to find boxed collectors, we had to find loose collectors, and go through that whole process. And the best thing about it was like the more people we visited, the more they would recommend us to other people. Like, oh, you should check with so-and-so because they do this and so-and-so. And it was like this really great kind of like chain reaction where every time we would visit somebody, they would recommend 2 or 3 more people. And then we would reach out to those people, visit them, and then they would recommend more people. So it was really just this amazing community effort. Like, there's no way this book could have come together without the help of the whole toy community, like really coming together to help us document this stuff. The lower picture is my least favorite part of the process, photographing accessories. This part sucks because, we wanted to make sure we had really good top-down individual shots of every accessory that comes with every figure, every playset, so that in the book, we've got photos of all the accessories so that if you're somebody who's collecting, you can see exactly what comes with every figure, if you want to piece everything together. But that's a very, very, very tedious process because you literally have to set up the camera the right way, you figure it out, and then you move one piece of accessory under the camera, you click it. You move the next one over, you click it. And you just do that, and it takes hours, just to go through and photograph all these accessories. Especially when you have to deal with stuff that don't sit perfectly flat. Like, there's always weird shaped things, and then you have to get the sticky tack out and try to level it and make sure it doesn't fall over so you can get a nice top-down shot. It's still my least favorite part of the whole process. It's just awful. This is a great behind-the-scenes photo too of when we were shooting Eternia outside of the packaging, and this kind of shows a little bit this is the other guy that's in there. That's Val Staples. That's my partner on the book, and so he and I were the ones that traveled around and did all the photography together. And that's really kind of it's a good teamwork thing because he did a lot of the hands-on stuff, setting things up, getting them ready to go, while I had to be behind the camera and getting my shot focused in. He would adjust lighting for me. I mean, we really got a good rhythm down as we were going through things. One of the things that was really a challenge with it is, as I talked about, the more we did it, the better we got at it. So when we got towards the end and it was time to start getting the photos ready to put in our layouts in the books, we started to realize that a lot of the stuff we shot early on in our journey was not as good as the stuff we had shot later on in the journey. And because we wanted everything to look as good as possible, we reshot a bunch of stuff from the very beginning of the whole thing. So it's we went back, because we got, the better we got at it, it was well, we need everything to look the same. So it was difficult and it was a lot of work, but ultimately we were very happy with the outcome. So if you have not seen the book yet, I'm going to show you guys a couple sample pages here, just so you can see what we decided on for a layout on the book. And this was another challenge because you want it to be clean and easy to see everything, but you also want to make sure everything's included. And so finding a good layout was a very, very tricky part of this whole thing. And I've been a big fan of a lot of toy guides, toy books. I have tons of various guides. I love, like Mark Bellomo's stuff he's done for Star Wars and G.I. Joe and Transformers are very good. I've got the old Steve Sansweet Star Wars guide. So, I would reference a lot of guides to see kind of what their layouts looked like and use it as inspiration, but we still kind of came up with our own layout there, and we decided on doing one figure per page because that made the most sense for the book is already like 750 pages, so we had to find a way to, make that work. So one figure per page, and then like 2 to 4 pages for play sets, depending on how big the play sets were. We got the front and back shot of the figure in the packaging laid out on there. We've got full turnarounds of the figure. You can see like Mosquito's only got the one accessory, but there's a good example of like how the accessories are laid out so you can see it. And then the little film strip was a fun idea, and that's all credit to Val because that was his idea. We really wanted to be able to demonstrate action features the best we could. And it's not always the easiest thing to do, like just in photography. So we kind of came up with this little film strip idea that shows the step-by-step progression of how the action features work, sort of taking cues from what you see on the back of the card backs. And you can see, like on Mosquito's card back, there's the like step-by-step illustrations of how his blood pumping feature works. So we kind of followed that, but we did the little film strip thing to show like a step-by-step process of how the feature works. So in Mosquito's case, you pump the button on his back and the awesome liquid blood flows through his chest. He's the coolest toy in the whole line. Come at me, he's the coolest. So there's a good, that's an example of like your Masters of the Universe page right there, Princess of Power. And notice that we also kind of color-coded everything too. So the way we did it with like, the heroic warriors all have red borders, the Horde, like what we saw with the Mosquito's, got the black borders. Princess of Power's got the pink borders. We also added, down in the corner of the page, there's like a little, if there's a logo associated, like in the Horde would have the Horde logo. We got a little Catra logo for Catra here. I thought that was pretty cool. But same kind of thing, so she doesn't have like a film cell because there's no action feature, but we do have the little burst effect there to show the removable mask. So that way you can see the alternate, like this is what she looks like with the mask off kind of a thing. New Adventures of He-Man is a really weird toy line. And I don't know if any of you guys ever really focused on it before, but it was one of my favorite things to document for this book just because there's so much weird stuff in this line. The Doomcopter is probably my favorite stupid toy in this line because it's Skeletor flying around on a helicopter that's got his face on the front of it. I mean, come on, that's amazing. And it glows in the dark. And you can see we got the little burst there showing the glow in the dark effect. I love photographing glow in the dark toys. They're a lot of fun. So that was a cool one there too. But again, this is an example of one that has an action feature also. So not only do we have the glowing effect on there, but you can also see the propeller launching off because that works as like a projectile also, where it blasts the propeller off. The 2002 toy line, or 2000X, and this is a very special page for me specifically, and I'll explain. Are you guys familiar with this variant at all? Has anybody ever seen this or heard of this? Oh, some of you guys know. So, towards the end of this toy line, they started releasing a lot of weird repaints where they just came out in these wacky colors. They almost didn't make any sense. And this Skeletor right here is one of the most infamous, because his paint deco is so ugly and garish. For some reason, he's wearing shiny gold armor. He's got black sleeves painted on his arms and legs, but like his hands and feet are still bare, so it's like the normal Skeletor blue. His face is like pumpkin orange, and then his torso is vac metalized blue, so it's shiny. I do not know what these colors mean, why they came up with this. It's the weirdest thing ever, but in the community, he started getting referred to as Disco Skeletor, just because of the weird paint deco. And he has sort of become like this cult favorite variant in the community because it's so ugly. The figure was just called Skeletor. I mean, he didn't have an actual name, he was just called Skeletor. But the community has called him Disco Skeletor for years. So, Working on this book, one of the rules that I had to go by, since it's a licensed book, is that every figure, the name on the page has to match exactly what the name on the packaging is. That was like Mattel's rule. When I submitted this page, I submitted it as Disco Skeletor. I wanted to see if we could squeak that by. And they came back and they said, okay, we can't call him Disco Skeletor, but we'll let you say Disco Repaint. And I was like, done deal. Because this means that we have officially named this figure Disco Skeletor. So if there's one thing I get to claim in my life, it's that I officially got this guy named Disco Skeletor. I love it, it's fun. And then we got the Masters of the Universe Classics line, which was the big collector line that ended in 2019, right before all the new stuff that is now in store. So that's kind of where this book ends off. And just showing you He-Man here, that seems like the perfect one to show from this line. And again, these figures were a lot more articulated. They didn't really have action features. These were more like collector figures. But a lot of times they did have a lot more accessories. So again, you can see all the photos of the accessories. There's also a list of the accessories. And even showing like the mailer box that they came in. Because these were online exclusive and they shipped to you. So like that's what that little white box is the mailer box. And as that line went on, they started actually like printing the figures' names on the boxes. So we wanted to make sure that we felt like that was part of the line. We needed to show these mailer boxes. So it's kind of just an example of what everything looks like throughout the book. It covers all the play sets, all the vehicles are in there too. So it was one of those things that at the time we were doing it, it was going to be like complete. Like this is everything that's ever been made for He-Man. And then all this new stuff just came out. You know, in 2020 they launched the Origins line and then Masterverse. And so there's tons of new product now. So, but this still covers a large portion of the history of Masters of the Universe. It's available now. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it in your local comic shop. Support your local comic shops for sure. You can get it in bookstores. Barnes and Nobles carries it. So it's all over the place. And it's been really cool getting to come to shows like this and you know, talk to people about the book and have people bring the book in. It's just really cool to see. It's been a very cool experience and something that I really enjoyed putting together. And that's really all I got for a presentation, but I do want to open it up for any questions. Anything you guys want to ask about the book itself, the process, if you want to talk about YouTube or toys, anything you guys got you want to talk? Yeah, right here.
So with people like Scott Knightley, who are in the industry now making sort of channels and sort of talking about stuff, but also kind of giving their 2 cents on the current status of toys.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on people that have sort of knowledge about things, kind of talking about like fan stuff like that?
I don't know. I got to be real careful with what I say because I don't want to discredit Scott or anything. I think obviously they're free to do that. You know, and I do think an inside opinion is always a cool thing to hear, but I also think it's important to remember that a lot has changed since Scott was there too, and I don't always agree with everything that, I mean, like, I don't even watch everything. People are constantly like, did you see what Scott said? I mean, you know, and people are coming to me and telling me this, and I'm always okay, but he's just another opinion out there, and yeah, I mean, it is cool, like, getting a peek behind the curtain, right? And like, clearly he has quite a bit of experience. I mean, he was the bulk of the classics line. He was there, and he knows how things were run at that time, and he knows how, he's very knowledgeable about, like, you know, the costs involved in, like, mold making and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's definitely good bits of knowledge in there, but as you pointed out, he is also very heavily injecting his personal opinions in things too. So it's one of those things where, just like with anything else, you got to learn to separate like the fact from the opinion, and that's hard to do for all of us, right? It's hard. So I guess that's really all I got. That's a hard question. Yes.
Is anything really hard to track down, like any specific figures?
Oh yeah, there was a couple hard ones to track down. So some of the things in the vintage line that were the hardest to track down for me were like they had these accessory kits that came out towards the end of the line. There was like the tower tools, the cliff climber, and the scuba tack. And the scuba tack specifically was very hard to find in good shape. And if you've never seen this before, this is like It's a weird like scuba outfit that's got like flippers and like this little propeller pack, and it attached to the vintage figures. Like it's got Skeletor on the box wearing it. And it came out like way at the end of the line, like 87. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard about like how brittle and fragile the Eternia playset monorail tracks are, but they're made of like this really brittle blue plastic. Well, the scuba tack is completely made of that exact same blue plastic. And it is the most brittle, fragile toy like in that entire line. So we had a hard time finding one. And then when we finally found a guy who had one, who was like, oh, I'll ship it to you so you can photograph it. Because when we got to the end, when I had just like a small list of things left to do, I actually sent out call outs and like we're finding people that were willing to like ship me their items so that I can photograph it, and then I would ship it back to them, which is like I was scared to do it because I don't want to hurt anybody's, I don't want to break anybody's things. So this guy sends me the scuba tack, and I open the box, and it is in tiny little shards. It just completely like disintegrated into just the tiniest little pieces. I couldn't believe it. I don't know if it just because it just got jostled the right way in the box, but I had never seen anything like broken like that in a vintage toy before. Like it was unrepairable. It was tiny, tiny little pieces, and it was awful. I felt so bad because then I had to tell this guy, oh man, your thing showed up and it's totally broken, bro. I don't know what to tell you, but it's broken. Luckily, he was very cool about it. He didn't mind, surprisingly. He was very nice. I felt terrible. So it took us a while to find that, and finally at PowerCon one year, somebody like hand-delivered one to me. And we were able to get it photographed and hand it back, and that's how we were able to finally get that thing shot. So that was probably one of the hardest things to get, just because of how fragile the dang thing is. And that's like one of those things where like there are boxed ones out there. I would almost tell you like, if you have a boxed one of those, don't open it. I bet it's broken inside the box. I bet it is. I mean, that's how fragile that thing is. Cool, anything else? Yeah.
Did Mattel help you at all?
No, Mattel did not help me. The only thing Mattel did was approve everything and then send me weird notes that I had to fight back on and tell them they were wrong. So the thing with Mattel is like a lot of people were like, and this is a question I got a lot. People were like, why don't you just go to Mattel and photograph everything? Mattel doesn't have all this stuff. Like the best people to document this stuff are the fans. We know better too. You got to remember, like a lot of the people that are working there right now, like they know what's there now, but they may not even be as knowledgeable about this stuff as we are. They have a small little museum of old toys, which I actually just got to see recently at Mattel.
I saw your video.
Yeah. But it was a very small. Like that's really all they have, I think. I know they have a vault where they keep stuff, but they don't have like one of everything that they've ever made. So we had to really rely on ourselves for this stuff. And then, like we would have to send everything through for approval. And then sometimes they would come back with like weird notes where they would say something like, well, shouldn't we call it this? And then I'd have to go, well, no, because that's not, you told me it had to be the name on the packaging and this is the name of the figure on the packaging. Like I had weird little fights with that. And here's the other weird one. And this is the one I have to be careful of. I should say. So they didn't want me to include the Super 7 stuff in the book. And if you guys don't know, Super 7 took over for Mattel and they finished the Classics line for them. Under license. I mean, they licensed it from Mattel and they finished the Classics line and they put out their own Snake Mountain, and the Snake Mountain was kind of like the end of the line. And one of the things that happened, like when we sent our stuff off, Mattel came back and they were like, why is the Super 7 stuff? And I was like, well, what do you mean why? Because it's part of the line. And they're like, well, we don't think that should be in there. And so I had to fight them. And luckily I won, because I was like, we can't release this with, like, that's part of the line, whether you guys want to acknowledge it or not. Like, you licensed it to them, they finished the line, so it should be in there. Because they did the same thing about the NECA Staction figures. The Stactions are in there. Because NECA continued the 2002 line in the form of statues that were action figure sized. So we included a spread showing those in there too, and that was another thing where they were like, why is this NECA stuff in here? And I'm like, come on, guys, like this is part of it, it's gotta be in there. Luckily I won, it wasn't like a big fight, but it was baffling to me that they were like, we don't want that in there. Like, okay. But yeah, so they weren't huge, I mean, anything else? But yeah.
Hey, this is awesome, man. Thanks for taking us through this. I can't wait to get it.
Yeah.
Was this experience positive enough where you would want to do another toy line? And if so, what other toy line would that be?
You know, I've really enjoyed doing this, and it was a lot of work, and it broke me a couple times. But I loved doing it, and I definitely think that I would like to continue documenting toys for another book.
Oh, there we go.
So, maybe I'll do another one. Yes, I am actively working on a Ninja Turtles book right now. So, I'm really hoping that I have some official, solid information to announce on it next year. That's the plan. But I'm actively in the photography stages for a line that is way bigger and way more complicated than He-Man. But also one of my favorite toy lines that really I felt like needed to be properly documented. So yeah, something to look forward to if you enjoyed the He-Man book. Cool. Yeah?
Besides Mattel, who's your favorite third-party producer of toys as of now?
Probably NECA, I think, would be my, besides Mattel. I think their stuff is the other stuff that I buy the most. I mean, I really love what they're doing with Ninja Turtles, but I also really loved a lot of the other stuff that they were doing. Like, I loved their Gremlins figures, and all the video game stuff that they did was really cool. So I think NECA's probably up there too.
You know, you like Mondo?
I like Mondo, yeah. I like the Battle Cat, yeah. Those guys were really cool. So I got to spend like the day with them talking about that Battle Cat and seeing it in person. Which is, have you guys all seen that Battle Cat that Mondo is doing? The 1/6 scale Battle Cat. It's expensive. It's like $500, but it's huge, beautifully detailed, like 4 interchangeable heads, fully articulated. That thing was amazing. And honestly, I really like what Mondo's doing right now with the line. Like that He-Man that they just released is so good. So I've never been a 1/6 collector at all. I don't, like Hot Toys and all that stuff. I never really got into it. But I always knew I'd be in trouble if somebody did like really good He-Man ones. And here we are. They're doing them. That's crazy. But yeah, Mondo's doing good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff out there right now. It's almost too much. Can't keep up with it.
Now, were you excited about the new Eternia set?
I was excited about the new Eternia set. Honestly, I was surprised by the new Eternia set. I did not think we would be getting Eternia. And, like people have been, for the last year, people have been like, oh, they should do an Eternia. I would love to see Eternia. And I was always like, you guys are crazy. Where would we put something that big? We don't need something that big. And then sure enough, at Comic-Con, you walk in and I'm just like, what? We're doing this? Okay, I guess we're doing this. But yeah, I backed it. Did you back it? You backed it?
Yes.
Anybody else in here back Eternia? It's like a crowdfunding thing right now. Which is also, I will say, doing a lot better than I expected, to be perfectly honest. I didn't think it would have problems meeting the goal. I thought we would get funding. 5,000 didn't seem like that far-fetched. But I felt like beyond that was far-fetched. I was surprised that we've blown past 8,000 already.
Yeah.
So
I think they had gone past 5,000 on the 19th, which was the deadline to get the grace off.
Yep, I know. So it's doing well, and I'm curious to see how the campaign goes now, because we're definitely going to hit that plateau, right? Because the early bird's over, so there's no incentive right now. And that's how crowdfunding always goes. It always spikes at the beginning, plateaus, and then on the last couple days, it's going to spike again. So I'm curious to see if Mattel's going to like throw anything new to sweeten the pot kind of a thing to encourage that push to 10,000, or if we're just going to let it play out and see what happens. I'm really curious to see how they handle it. Because this is really kind of their first, I mean, I know they did a WWE one of these, but they're still fairly new at this whole thing. So it'll be interesting. I don't know. How do you guys feel about the crowdfunding thing in general? For it, against it, and whatever. Like,
Depends on the team doing it.
huh?
Depends on the team doing it.
Depends on the team doing it, that's for sure, right?
Hasbro's done a decent job.
Hasbro's done a decent job, but they've had some flops too, and that goes back to depending on the team who's doing it, because I feel like their Star Wars team needs a kick in the pants, man. I don't know what's going on with those, but their Star Wars ones are. I mean, like they got the Razor Crest, right? The Razor Crest funded, but like that Rancor was such a like miss. I don't know what happened there.
Well, the current one, the Ghost Rider, is struggling.
The Ghost Rider one is like actively losing backers. That's like kind of painful to watch. I don't know what's going on there either. Yeah, I don't know. But you know what? And this is what I always say about the crowdfunding thing. I feel like this really is the perfect opportunity for the fans to vote with their dollars, because that's what you're actually doing. So this is a good way to show them, well, it's not something we want. It's not something we care about. And maybe that's what's happening with the Ghost Rider one. You know what I mean? It's just, people don't feel it's worth the money, so they're not backing it. And I don't know, I think that is the one good thing about the crowdfunding, is it is giving fans the chance to really show these companies what they're willing to pay for, you know? Anything else?
I had a question about opinions on Masterverse. I know
Oh.
it first started, it seemed like opinions were kind of strong.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the tide is starting to turn now that they're releasing like all sorts of
Definitely.
new characters?
I will say it's turning for me, because I was very cold on Masterverse in the beginning, and I didn't look, and I know that I was there for all of Classics. I collected the entirety of the Classics line, and I know that a lot of people missed it. Trust me, I know. A lot of people yell at me about it all the time. But I had a hard time like picking up Masterverse at first, because I felt like they were inferior versions of what I had already bought with Classics. That's just the way I felt. I didn't like the bodies felt too slender to me, too tall and slender. They didn't feel like He-Man figures. You know, He-Man figures they're supposed to be big, buff. And you know, I just didn't really like them. But it's definitely one of those lines that like they've really like started to find themselves with it. And some of the new things they've been introducing has been what's been grabbing me. Like, I think the new Eternia concept is really cool, because it's giving us a new spin on these characters, and they're well done. Like, they're cool designs, and they're doing that thing where they're like homaging things that came before while doing something new and different at the same time, and it actually feels fresh. It's not like we're just getting the same figures over again. We're getting something a little new and different. You know, and then they got like, they're starting to put things in like the movie figures, which I was totally shocked by. I didn't think we'd ever see Mattel do the movie figures, because if you guys don't know, for years there's been, like, William Stout, the costume designer for the movie, owns the rights to those looks. And he like said years ago that he would never work with Mattel. So that's why they never did like and then Super 7 like worked out a deal with William Stout directly, and that's how they did their figures. So I didn't think we would ever see any more movie figures, and now apparently Mattel worked something out, and now they've got, you know, we know for sure He-Man and Skeletor are coming, but they've already been hinting that there's more movie stuff coming, and that's exciting to me. So I like the idea of Masterverse incorporating different things from different eras of He-Man and combining it together, kind of like Classics did. I think that's important, because it gives something for everybody. A little something from all the different eras is really cool to see.
Now, you think they'll move into Filmation style?
I think it's very possible that they're going to move into Filmation style. I'll leave it at that.
So where would you like the Origins line to go?
So Origins right now is already doing something that I wanted to see it do from the beginning, and that's where they're not just solely redoing the vintage line, but they're starting to incorporate things in the vintage style. That's exciting to me. When I get a brand new figure in the vintage style that was never a vintage toy, I think that's the best thing, because now I've got something new that could potentially fit in with your vintage line, or anything like that. I think the inclusion of the Sunman stuff was really cool. I understand why a lot of people had no attachment to it, so they don't know what it is. But I like seeing that kind of thing. But I also love that they're doing like I don't know, like they're doing like the Revelations King Grayskull with Eternia, and that's cool. I like that they're doing some of the weird things like Frogmonger, which is like the Castle Grayskull Dungeon Great artwork come to life. Like that is cool. Stuff like that that we never got before is what I want to see Origins keep doing, because that will keep it interesting to me. And if they start incorporating like, they need to do like some of the unreleased stuff. If they do Hero and Eldor, I mean, that would be really cool. If they're able to stretch out and do some of the other obscure stuff, like the Where's the Tea line, if you know, that like Argentina line that was like, used the He-Man bodies, like those characters would look really cool, just like one here, one there, you know, just spread them out in the waves. But I don't know, I like the idea of getting new things in the vintage style. I think that's what's exciting to me. You know, I've already got all the other characters. I mean, I know a lot of people want those characters, but I've already got I want new guys, I want new stuff. And so that's fun.
Do you think they'll go into New Adventures?
I think I would like to see more of it, because they just did the He-Man in that box set.
That 4-pack.
That 4-pack.
And they also did a Filmation.
And they did a Filmation. I know. It would be cool to see them branch out and do more of those. I would love a New Adventure Skeletor in a vintage figure style. See, that's one of those things where it's like, you get to see if the designs from New Adventures work well on the vintage bodies, right? And then it makes you go, well, I wonder if they would have continued instead of changing the style completely for New Adventures, because I think some of those character designs are wonderful. And getting them in a vintage figure style? Come on, that'd be amazing. Give me a slush head on a 5.5 body. That would be awesome. That would be so cool. Anybody else got any geeky questions? Oh, yeah, Chris.
In terms of like Masterverse and Origins, once they've run their course, do you have any plans for a sequel to the
Yeah, I know, that's what I get asked that a lot. Like, when are you going to do a sequel to the book? And that's kind of been my answer. Like, I want to see how far this is all going to go. It's already gone way longer than I expected. I was actually kind of been blown away that we've gotten so much Motu product this past couple years, and it doesn't seem like they have any signs of slowing it down yet. So I want to see how it all plays out, because I would want the second book to be as complete as possible. I don't want to release a book if Origins is still going, I don't want to release a book in the middle of the line. You know what I mean? I want it to be a perfect companion to this book, so that you've got everything, right, if you buy it. So that I'm definitely planning to follow it up. We'll just have to wait and see how long that's going to take.
That's got like six lines going right now.
It's nuts.
Constructs as well, Fox.
Oh my God, yeah, I know. I mean, if you start talking about all the stuff, and that's the thing, like, I would probably, like this book here, the first one I did was just the Mattel stuff. So I didn't even go outside of Mattel and like talk about like all the role play toys that came out from different companies and all that stuff. And now you've got like the Funkos and the Mondos and the Loyal Subjects and the Super 7 Reactions and the Muscle figures. Like, there's so many licensed Motu toys right now. It's like, where do I draw the line? Like, you could do a whole book just on the third party stuff, it feels like. So it's one of those things where you also have to decide, like, is that something people are going to care about? Like, do they really want all that in a book? Like, what's the, you know? It would be cool to do all of it. I would love to do a book about just the merchandise, because there's so many weird merchandise pieces from the 80s specifically that would be awesome to see in a book. Except there's so much of it out there, it's hard to know if you've got everything, you know? It would have to almost be like a thing where you're like, you know it's not complete, but here's a bunch of cool stuff that you could look at, kind of a book. I would love to do that. That'd be cool. All right, anything else? Probably about time to wrap up here anyway, so. Yep. Well, guys, thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch the presentation. And if you've got the book already, thank you. If you guys want to look at the book, I've got it down at the table. You're free to come by and check it out in person if you'd like to.
Where is your table at?
It is, it's like in one of the far end rows. So like, if you walk in the door and turn right and go all the way down, and then up that last aisle, like all of the guests are in that last aisle right there. So I'm right in the middle of it. So, cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming.